This is what Elvis would tip every single time. People in the United States always leave a tip when they go to a restaurant, whether they're there for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. Tipping shows that you like the service. The usual amount is between 15% and 25%, but it depends on your taste and your experience at the place. Most of the time, people don't tip at fast food places like McDonald's, but they do at restaurants where you sit down. Even famous people have to follow this rule of manners. Some of the Hollywood stars on this list are very good at tipping, while others are just plain rude. Check out the list to find out which celebrities are said to be good at tipping and which ones aren't. Angelina. Location: Chicago Field Museum. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: $300. Famed people want to do fun things with their kids, like going on museum trips, just like us. They were Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie before they broke up. In the summer of 2007, they took their 4 kids on a tour of the Chicago Field Museum. The museum guard who gave them the VIP tour said they were a nice couple who were also kind. After the museum closed, the family went there so they wouldn't have to deal with a lot of people. They looked around the museum alone, and when they were done, Brad gave the guard a $300 tip. Tom Brokaw. Location: New York City private party. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 25%. From the 1960s until now, Tom Brokaw's been in the news, and he worked for NBC for 22 years. The reporter's first job was at the LA office of NBC. The author of The Greatest Generation is still writing books, but he's no longer working as an actor. He's still out and about, and he hangs out in New York City with a lot of famous people. One waitress in New York City said Brokaw was wonderfully nice and generous with tips. When he threw a party for his staff, he gave the managers his credit card and told them to add a 25% tip. Christy Turlington. Location: New York City. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 18 to 20%. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Christy Turlington was a huge star as a fashion model. The model from California has made a big name for herself in the fashion world. Fans of the beauty will be glad to hear that she and her husband, Edward Burns, are very nice people. They've been married since 2004 and have 2 children together, Grace and Finn. One waiter in New York City said that she eats a lot when she and her husband go out to eat. The beauty also leaves big tips, giving between 18 and 20% of each restaurant bill. Kyle MacLachlan. Location: New York City. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 18% plus cash. Kyle MacLachlan, who played Agent Cooper on Twin Peaks, is a TV legend who's worked in Hollywood since the 1980s. He's well known for playing Dale Cooper on both Twin Peaks and the show that came before it, Fire Walk With Me. He's also been in 2 David Lynch movies, Dune and Blue Velvet. MacLachlan brought a big group of people with him when he went to a popular spot in New York City. For a party of 12, he called ahead and tipped 18% plus a bunch of cash, according to his waitress. But the waitress at that same place say he came back a few days later and only left a 10% tip. JFK Jr. Location: Martha's Vineyard. Cost of receipt: $1 to $5. Tip added: $10. A waitress at Stained Apron said John F. Kennedy Jr. was one of the most polite and generous customers she's ever had. He came into her little diner near the airport a lot and was gracious and wonderful. The Kennedy family member always sat at the counter and read the paper, she said, so he never got any attention. He often talked about politics and island life on Martha's Vineyard. The waitress said he'd leave a $10 tip for even a coffee. The Airport Cafe and JFK Jr. are no longer there, but the lawyer is still known as a very nice guy. Walter Cronkite. Location: Martha's Vineyard. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: unknown. A long time ago, Walter Cronkite was one of the most trusted guys in the news business. He was a CBS News reporter for 19 years, and people loved him as Old Iron Pants and Uncle Walter. He died in 2009, but he left a memory. He was so nice to people outside of work. One waitress in Martha's Vineyard said he was like a mix between your grandfather and Captain Kangaroo. She said hearing the voice while he ordered a cheeseburger was surreal. The famous person always spoke nicely to the waiters and tipped well. Jennifer Jason Leigh. Location: unknown. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 20%. Jennifer Jason Leigh became well known for her roles in movies from the 1980s such as Fast Times at Ridgemont High and The Best Little Girl in the World. She's still acting. Some of the movies she's been in are The Hateful Eight and Atypical. One waiter called Leigh an odd duck, but the star is said to tip well, putting a 20% tip on her meals. Jason Leigh has always been known as a nice person, and she's talked about her love of acting in a lot of talks. According to Vanity Fair, her ability to change jobs was chameleonic, and they said it was a good time to have those skills. Carmen Policy. Location: St. Louis, Missouri. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: $100. People who know a lot about law and sports know the name Carmen Policy. The lawyer and football executive is well known for his work with the 49ers, a San Francisco team, in the 1980s and 1990s. Policy also owned a small part of the Cleveland Browns, another NFL team, in the early 2000s when he sold it. The man from Youngstown, Ohio doesn't act like he has a $1 million net worth. During his meal in St. Louis, he added a $100 tip to the bill just for dinner. A lot of leaders can afford that kind of tip, but they don't give it. Policy is one of the few that does. John Michael Montgomery. Location: Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 20 to 25%. There's no one like country singer John Michael Montgomery. He started singing with his brother Eddie, and the two of them became known as the Montgomery Gentry. In 1992, John Michael went solo. Singer is worth $20 million because of how well he's done in singing. The country star is also known to tip well. The people on his tour bus who went into a restaurant in the Twin Cities were friendly and courteous. He signed a book for the waitress, and he and his friends also left a 20 to 25% tip on top of the bill. Charlie Daniels. Location: somewhere down south. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: unknown. You can add country star Charlie Daniels to this list of great tippers. Someone who worked at a restaurant down south and knew The Devil Went Down to Georgia singer said he was always down to earth, left big tips, and ate a lot. The singer played country music for 60 years before he had a stroke and died in 2020. He was 83 years old when he died, and he was worth $20 million. It makes sense that the country star is buried in Tennessee at the Mount Juliet Memorial Gardens. Elvis Presley. Location: Miami Beach, Florida. Cost of receipt: $0. Tip added: an entire limousine. Elvis is known as the king of rock and roll, and he was one of the most important musicians of the 20th century. Elvis was not only a rock star, but he was also a very kind person. His record company hired a car driver to take him to a convention center where he had shown while he was in Miami Beach. Elvis didn't have to pay for it, but he still left a big tip. As Elvis Presley got out of the limo, he asked the driver if he owned the car. When the driver said he didn't, Presley told him, "Now you own it." He then gave the driver the whole car as a thank you gift for his great service. Dan Quayle. Location: Aspen Inn, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Cost of receipt: $50 to $100. Tip added: 15%. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, Dan Quayle was the 44th Vice President of the United States. He still works in politics, but not as much as he did when he was running for Vice President. He was born and raised in Indianapolis. You should decide if 15% or 20% is the norm before you decide if this is a good tip. Dan Quayle left a 15% tip on a bottle of wine and a duck meal at the Aspen Inn in Bethlehem, PA. He stopped by to see his son, who's a student at Lehigh. His son, his wife, a guardian, and a few Lehigh teachers were at his party. Willie Nelson. Location: New Orleans, Louisiana. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 50 to 100%. Willie Nelson is so great, how can you not love him? For decades, the singer, actor, author, and campaigner has been a big name in show business. There are a lot of people who love this 89-year-old country star. As it stands, he's worth $25 million, but it would be more if he hadn't had trouble with the IRS in the 1990s. A waiter in New Orleans said nothing but good things about the star of Shotgun Willie, calling him a great person. Nelson was also very polite and thoughtful, and he left a 50% to 100% tip on his bill. There's nothing else a waiter could want. Travis Barker. Location: Corona, California. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: unknown. A server from Corona, California said he worked with Travis Barker, who's the drummer for Blink-182. He was very nice, and she said he tipped very well. The singer, who was recently diagnosed with pancreatitis, has been in the news a lot lately because of his public relationship with Kourtney Kardashian. Blink-182 is a famous pop-punk band that came out in 1999. Everyone in the band has become pretty rich since then. Barker alone is worth $50 million. It's nice to know that he still tips well, even though he's rich. Charles Barkley. Location: Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: unknown. Charles Barkley's attitude is a bit divisive. Fans of the NBA great remember how strong he was on the court, and now the round mound of rebound is a television star. People either love or hate him because he never holds back what he thinks. One waitress in Philadelphia said that the NBA star was always kind, thoughtful, and a great tipper, so he didn't live up to his nasty image. The waiter said Barkley just wants to be treated with respect and not made to sign things all the time by staff or other customers. Patricia Arquette. Location: City Walk, Los Angeles. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 25%. Patricia Arquette, an actress, went to City Walk, Hollywood, LA with her 2 kids. Scott, her helper, sped through her order because she was in a hurry. Arquette left a 25% tip at the end of the meal. Scott said she was polite because she always said please and thank you when he went to the table. She's won a lot of awards for her work in Hollywood, such as an Oscar, a BAFTA, 2 Emmys, a Golden Globe, and 2 SAG Awards. Because of how well she's done in Hollywood, Arquette has a net worth of about $24 million. Chris Slade. Location: Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: 100%. There was a time when Chris Slade played defense for the New England Patriots. His cousin played football for the University of Pittsburgh. In Oakland, he often went to a famous restaurant. The waitress said Slade was a true gentleman who never acted like he needed special treatment. She also said he was a phenomenal tipper, giving the full amount of his bill as a tip. His cousin and he always drank the same thing, Blue Bubblegum Jones Soda. To keep the waitresses from having to run back and forth between busy shifts, they'd order several drinks at once. Andre Agassi. Location: Washington, D.C. Cost of receipt: $60. Tip added: $40. It's said that Andre Agassi is one of the best tennis players of all time. This person used to be the #1 star and has won 8 titles and an Olympic gold medal. That makes him one of only 8 people to have won a Grand Slam. He was the second man to do it during the Open era. An office in Washington, D.C., the waitress said that Agassi was very nice when he came in for lunch with his wife, the tennis player Steffi Graf. Not a single complaint was made, and Agassi even left a $100 bill for a $60 check, which is a 67% tip. Dennis Farina. Location: Malibu, California. Cost of receipt: $300. Tip added: $350. Dennis Farina was a movie and TV actor who was in Crime Story, Midnight Run, Snatch, and other movies and shows. He was often cast as a tough or dishonest police officer. His image off-screen didn't match up with who he was on-screen, though. He was a nice person, and a waiter in Malibu said that because he was so kind, he stood out from other famous people who came in. He paid with cash and left a $350 tip on a $300 check. The waiter was shocked and thanked him very much for being so kind. Meryl Streep. Location: unknown. Cost of receipt: unknown. Tip added: unknown. Not many people know this, but Meryl Streep used to work as a waitress, so she knows how to be nice to waitstaff. The Oscar winner grew up in New Jersey. When she was younger, she worked as a waitress at the Hotel Somerset. Folks say that Streep is nice to waiters and waitresses, which makes sense since she's known for being nice in general. Many people have said that Meryl Streep is one of the greatest actors of all time. It's good to know that, unlike some other Hollywood stars, she hasn't let her fame get to her head. Oprah Winfrey. Location, New York City. Cost of receipt, $0. Tip added, $0. A blog post by Oprah Winfrey says that you should leave a 15% tip to be the best customer you can. This has gotten her into some trouble because of her ideas about tipping, which is strange because some waiters and waitresses say she's very nice, while others don't agree. A waiter in New York City said that before Oprah went to see a Broadway show, she went to the bar and drank 3 vodkas. It's interesting, though, that the millionaire didn't even pay for her drinks or leave a tip. He told them that he was still mad about what happened. You're the only one who can pick who to believe.